Good morning. I'm Christine James. On this Independence Day, the 4th of July, let's get right to it and speak with Peter Drummey. He's with the Massachusetts Historical Society. Thanks so much for joining us today. And we've got Peter Drummey on the line. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, my first question right out of the gate. Why is July 2nd, I know this is something you care about, not Independence Day?
Well, it's really interesting because July 2nd is the day the Continental Congress voted for independence. And I think in a kind of logical way, you would think that would be the day we would celebrate. In fact, John Adams, describing the independence, the celebration of independence, exactly as we know it today, it ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade, with shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end of this continent to the other, from this time forward forevermore. And I think that's how we would like to think of celebrating independence. But he wrote this letter on July 3rd because they had already voted. He thought what was important had already happened before the 4th of July. But when they proclaimed independence, the Declaration of Independence, on July 4th, that is the public announcement, it says at the top, July 4, 1776. So I think that became fixed in people's ideas, the declaration, the announcement of it, rather than the vote.
Interesting. Now, the way we celebrate it now, has that been something consistent? Was it always a big, rowdy affair? Was it a more solemn celebration over the decades? How does that work?
No, I think it really did have a celebratory effect. People started celebrating it from the next year onward, deep into the Revolution, and John Adams went right along with the program for the July 4th being the day they would celebrate. So it did have one interesting aspect that we don't think of, not right at the time, but in the early Republic in the 19th century, which was, you'll be surprised here, was very divided politically. Different political parties would have their own separate 4th of July celebrations. And that seems a little bit odd to us, I think, but that was how divided the country was back at the beginning.
That's a surprise. That's a surprise.
Yeah, and then over the course of the 19th century, the sort of things we think of, fireworks and parades, and even in Massachusetts, these parades that have horribles, that is, people in garish costumes satirizing, often at the beginning satirizing political people in public life. But that goes way back to certainly before the Civil War, so long established. And there are accounts of Marshfield had these going way back, but also Marshfield had other things like 4th of July dances. There was a big movement against excessive drinking, temperance in the 19th century. So they'd often have dances as being an alternative to rowdy activity, especially by, I was going to say young people, but I should say young men, but to sort of have people who would be on good behavior so they could attend. And in Marshfield, there was also, very early on, when you could do this, you would take the stagecoach to take the steamboat to come into Boston, where there would be very large fireworks over Boston Harbor. So that goes back a long time.
Wow, that sounds like a great way to celebrate the 4th, and of course, always appreciate your perspective. Thanks so much. That's Peter Drummey. He's with the Massachusetts Historical Society. Thanks again.
It's always good to talk to you.
You too.
Good to talk to you.